According to Nielsen streaming ratings, the latest original Disney Plus Star Wars series Andor has largely trailed behind its streaming competitors like The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and Obi-Wan. But nowadays, streaming numbers isn't an exact science, because that only takes into account those who are streaming on a television, not those who are watching on a laptop or a mobile device. But regardless of that, it still is in the top 10 overall when it comes to streaming shows. But with the name as synonymous as Star Wars, Disney is still quite disappointed with the ratings thus far. So they've expanded it beyond just Disney Plus on their other networks, ABC, FX, Freeform, and Hulu, all of which are now streaming the first 2 episodes of Andor to entice non-subscribers to want to get Disney Plus to see the rest of the series. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you've slept on Andor, don't. It's the best Star Wars series yet. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome, my friends. My name is Elon Osborne, and I like to talk about movies, audio, and music, and TV shows sometimes, apparently. And today, now that the entire first season is available to binge on Disney Plus, I encourage you, I implore you, I beg of you to please watch Andor. This show deserves to have fantastic ratings because it is the most cinematic, has the best acting, writing, and gorgeous cinematography out of all the Star Wars series so far. But I get it. I can see why some of you have put this on the back burner thinking, maybe I'll eventually get to it. The Mandalorian was widely popular because it was something new and fresh and the first Star Wars series of its kind, so there was already buzz behind it before it even started to stream. And then there was Boba Fett? Iconic. He already had a loyal fan base, not to mention having a deepfake Luke Skywalker make an appearance in his series. Ahsoka made an appearance as well, who is also very beloved. And then Obi-Wan, which has been demanded by fans for so many years, also bringing back Anakin / Darth Vader into the mix. But Cassian Andor had only made his appearance in Rogue One, which I personally think is the closest to the original trilogy compared to any of the 3 sequels. It's still one of my favorite films to this day. But Andor has a cast of characters that don't have a lot of sway to begin with. No icons, no legends, nobody with the last name Skywalker. But I think that is one reason why Andor is the best yet. It couldn't rely on iconic characters. I honestly feel like the previous shows that came out leaned a little too heavily on Darth Vader or Obi-Wan or Boba Fett or Mando or Luke Skywalker, and had some episodes that were just filler, knowing they'd get viewership just because of the already existing fan base that was foaming at the mouth, salivating for more original Star Wars content. I know there's been a backlash of Andor's slow burn, but hear me out. Yes, the overall story arc is slow, fleshing out these characters has been gradual, but it's so necessary. So despite the show not being wall-to-wall action, the editing is actually very tight. I felt like there were some entire episodes of Mandalorian that weren't exactly necessary, or maybe lingered a little too long in certain scenes in Boba Fett or Obi-Wan, but Andor? There is not a single frame that is wasted. Each Andor episode seems to end suddenly, which makes me want more. And there are a few episodes that are fairly short, like 37 minutes for example, but the majority of the episodes are at least 45 minutes, and when they ended, I thought to myself, oh wow, it's already over? That was like 30 minutes tops, right? No. So yes, the overall story is a slow burn, but each episode is edited so tightly. Bang, bang, bang. There are so many scenes where it's showing somebody doing something intercut with a conversation of some other people in another location. Editing techniques like that carry the story along with a fairly quickened pace. The writers and directors also build tension so well that I'm just chewing my fingernails off while it's all unfolding before my eyes. And speaking of eyes, the cinematography is outstanding. This series was the first to be filmed largely on location rather than relying heavily on the volume like all the previous series did. Don't get me wrong though, the volume is a technological marvel that has literally changed filmmaking for good. I'm all about technological advancements like it, since it helps the director, cinematographer, and especially the actors to react to landscapes and beautiful sets in real time, instead of just needing to pretend in front of a large green screen. But the luscious Scottish landscapes of Aldhani, the incredible set design of Verus. It makes a big difference when money is spent on actual locations and sets rather than creating most of it digitally. Since the volume was still fairly new tech, it seemed like I could see the seams a little bit more during The Mandalorian or Boba Fett or Obi-Wan. Now, ILM did an incredible job at creating these worlds like they always do, but it still had this glossy CGI look to everything, you know? Andor has this raw, gritty look that harkened back to the original trilogy, and filming on location had a huge part in that. I mean, look at these shots. Each one is a work of art in itself. Come on, people. Even the ships in this series are dope AF, like Luthen's and Mon Mothma's, which harkens back to like this classic 50s car vibe. Awesome. Can we talk about the cast though? A huge cast for one, but every single actor went all in. No one thought Star Wars was beneath them or decided they needed to phone it in, and there are compelling characters on both sides, good and bad, that hook you into their journeys throughout the series. Now, I haven't seen every actor's previous work, but I do know that I've seen Ebon Moss-Bachrach's phenomenal performance in Hulu's The Bear, being a wise guy jerk-off brother slaving away in a dumpy restaurant in Chicago before he was Arvel Skeen in Andor. I've seen Denise Goff's brilliant performance in Under the Banner of Heaven before she was the cold, calculating Imperial officer Dedra Meero. And Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma? Breathtaking. Her character arc is nothing flashy, but she plays the senator fighting with inner turmoil so well, trying to help finance a rebellion in its infancy with her clout and powerful political position. There was also a scene in which a slimy character is trying to force her to agree to some outlandish terms before donating some of his personal wealth to the rebellion, and she is not having it. She has been put into a corner that she can't get out of, and she knows it. And she is seething because of it. And yet, she doesn't raise her voice. As a side note, that's one reason why some critics say Leonardo DiCaprio didn't win an Oscar for so many years. This was honestly pointed out to me, and I kinda have to agree. If you look back at his filmography, it seems every time Leo's character becomes angry, he yells or shouts. There are more ways to show anger besides resorting to raising your voice. And Mon Mothma is a clear example of this. The rage inside her is quite apparent, yet she doesn't burst out into a tirade of expletives at an ear-piercing decibel. And of course, there are other standouts like Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen. Come on. He has a monologue late in the season about what he's sacrificed being a part of this rebellion that is outstanding. Hits you right in the feels, folks. Kyle Soller as Cyril Karn is such a captivating performance. He is largely behind a failed Imperial mission on Verus that sees him demoted, so his attempt at redemption and climbing back up the ladder is fascinating. When I'm rooting for both the good and the bad sides, that's brilliant writing, hands down. Same with Dedra Meero. There were times where I was rooting for her when she was trying to win over Major Partagaz with her tactics and plan of attack over another officer. Despite it being a war against good and evil, life in general is more complicated than everything being just black and white, and the writing beautifully portrays that complexity. But dude, let's not forget about Kino Loy, Bix, Cinta, Vel, Clea, Brasso, Marva, Saw Gerrera, Lonnie, even this guy, and of course Cassian Andor himself, and my new favorite droid, B2 Emo. I really think that his stuttering makes him so likable, or maybe that's just me. But that's just it. Despite Diego Luna's performance being great as Cassian, I honestly think it was outshined by the supporting cast because they all brought their A game. So kudos to Tony Gilroy and all the writers behind this series. It's Star Wars for adults. Maybe that's why it hasn't gotten the ratings like its predecessors, because it's geared for a more mature audience. And even though George Lucas has said many times that he wrote Star Wars for kids, I surely hope he sees this and thinks, so this is what Star Wars could have evolved into for a more mature audience. So needless to say, I'm all in. I am so looking forward to Andor Season 2. I'm all about seeing the events leading up to Rogue One. I am invested in these characters, I am invested in the cinematic look of Andor, the tension building, the music, which, by the way, this is probably just me since I'm a huge film score nerd, but did you notice that the title sequence music was different with every episode? I'm not sure what each different arrangement meant exactly, but I thought it was cool that it changed. It evolved as the series progressed. Didn't catch it? Well, Andor deserves at least a second run through, so pay attention to that next time, would you?
And there you have it.
Thank you all for joining me in this love letter to Andor. It really is top tier Star Wars that we haven't quite seen to this degree ever before. Besides Rogue One, of course, which you should also revisit. Gareth Edwards had such a monumental task to direct that film, and he passed with flying colors as far as I'm concerned. So, what are your thoughts? Have you even attempted to watch Andor? Did you pass on it and are now intrigued to watch it? Did you watch the whole thing and still aren't on board? Let me know. But seriously, if you haven't watched it at all yet, it deserves every bit of praise that the critics are giving it, and it deserves way more views than it's actually getting. So I hope views go up as more people like me are spreading the good word. As always, please be kind to each other out there. Don't just watch Andor on Disney+, experience it. And of course, always be listening.